Welcome back. I'm glad you made it. I was sitting here for a while wondering, they're going to turn up? I'm glad you did. Okay, so David Williams, Mr. Stink. See Mr. Stink? And the Duchess there. And there's Chloe. So, we know that Chloe's in trouble with her mum because she hasn't been doing her maths. She's been writing stories. And mum's not impressed with that at all. So Chloe feels really, really lonely. And now she can imagine how Mr. Stink feels, not having any friends. So this chapter is called Abandoned Starbucks. Okay. Monday morning, the first proper day of the Christmas holidays, a day Chloe had been dreading. She didn't have any friends she could text or email or SMS or Facebook or Twitter or whatever. But there was one person she wanted to see. Who do you think that is? By the time Chloe got to the bench, it was raining really heavily, and she wished she'd at last paused to pick up an umbrella. The Duchess weren't expecting you to see you again, said Mr. Stink. His eyes twinkled at the surprise, despite the rain. I'm so sorry I ran off like that, said Chloe. Don't worry, you're forgiven, he chuckled. Chloe sat down next to him. She gave the Duchess a stroke and then noticed that the palm of her hand was black. The dog's dirty. She surreptitiously wiped it on her trousers, and then she shivered as a raindrop ran down the back of her neck. Oh no, you're cold, said Mr. Stink. Shall we take shelter from the rain in a coffee shop establishment? Yes, good idea, said Chloe, not sure if taking someone quite so stinky into an enclosed space really was a good idea. As they walked to the town centre, the rain felt icy, almost becoming hail. When they arrived at the coffee shop, Chloe peered in through the steamed-up glass window. I don't think there's anywhere to sit down, she said. Unfortunately, sadly, the coffee shop was filled to bursting with Christmas shoppers trying to avoid the cruel British weather. But we can try, said Mr. Stink, picking up the Duchess and attempting to conceal her under his tweed jacket. He doesn't think the dog's going to be allowed in, so he's going to hide the dog under his jacket. The tramp opened the door for Chloe, and she squeezed herself inside. As Mr. Stink entered, the pleasing aroma of freshly brewed coffee killed over and died. His own special smell replaced it. There was silence for a moment, and then panic. People started running towards the door, clutching serviettes to their mouths as makeshift gas masks. Abandoned Starbucks, screamed a member of staff, and his colleagues immediately stopped making coffee and bagging muffins and ran for their lives. It seems to be thinning out a little, announced Mr. Stink. Of course, he doesn't realise that everybody can smell him, and they're scared and they run away. Soon, they were the only ones left in the shop. Maybe smelling this bad has its advantages, thought Chloe. If Mr. Stink's super smell could empty a coffee shop, what else could it do? Maybe he could clear a whole ice rink of skaters so she could have it to herself, or they could go to Alton Towers together and not have to queue for a single ride. Better still, she could take him and his smell into school one day, and if he was particularly stinky, then the head mistress, she would have to send everybody home, and she could have the day off. You take a seat here, child, said Mr. Stink. Now, what would you like to drink? Cappuccino, please, said Chloe, trying to sound all grown up. I think I'll have one too, said Mr. Stink, and he shuffled behind the counter and started opening tins. Righty-ho, two cappuccinos coming right up. The machines hissed and spat for a few moments, and then Mr. Stink pottered back over to the table with 2 mugs of a dark, unidentifiable liquid. On closer inspection, it appeared to be some kind of black slime. But Chloe was too well brought up to complain, and she pretended to sip whatever it was that he'd concocted for her. She even managed an almost convincing, lovely. I think she's just being polite. Mr. Stink stirred his solid brew with a dainty little silver spoon he pulled out from his breast pocket. Chloe stole a glance at it and noticed it was monogrammed. It had 3 little letters delicately engraved on the handle. She tried to get a better look, but he put it away before she could see what the letters were. What could they mean? Or was this simply another item Mr. Stink had purloined during his career as a gentleman thief? Possibly. So, Miss Chloe, said Mr. Stink, breaking her train of thought, it's the Christmas holidays, isn't it? He took a sip from his coffee, holding his mug elegantly between his fingers. Why aren't you at home decorating the tree with your family or wrapping presents? Well, I don't know how to explain. No one in Chloe's family was good at expressing their feelings. To her mother, feelings were best just an embarrassment, a sort of weakness. Just take your time, young lady. Chloe took a deep breath, and it all came flooding out. What started off as a stream soon became a rushing river of emotions. She told him how her parents argued most of the time, and how once she was sitting on the stairs when she heard her mother shout, "I'm only staying with you for the sake of the girls." That's really sad. How her little sister made her life a misery as well. She told Mr. Stink all about Annabelle. Nothing she ever did was good enough. How if she brought home some little bowl she'd made in pottery class, her mum would put it to the back of the cupboard, never to be seen again. However, if her little sister Annabelle brought any piece of artwork home, however awful that was, it was always put in pride of place behind bulletproof glass as if it was the Mona Lisa or some really expensive piece of art. Chloe told Mr. Stink how her mother was always trying to force her to lose weight. Up until recently, Mother had described her as having puppy fat. But once she turned 12, Mother rather cruelly started calling it flab, or even worse, blubber. It's a bit mean, isn't it? As if she was some sort of species of whale. Perhaps Mother was trying to shame her into losing weight. In truth, it only made Chloe more miserable. Of course it would do. And being miserable only made her eat more. Filling herself up with chocolate, crisps and cake felt like being given a much-needed hug. I know that feeling. She told Mr. Stink how she wished her dad would stand up to her mother sometimes, how she didn't find it easy to make friends because she was so shy, and how she liked making up stories and she was good at it, but it made Mother so angry, and how Rosamond ensured that every day at school was an absolute misery. She didn't like it. It was a long, long list, but Mr. Stink listened intently to everything she said as jolly Christmas songs played incongruously in the background. For someone who spent every day with only a little black dog for company, he was surprisingly full of wisdom. In fact, he seemed to like the opportunity to listen and talk and help. People really didn't stop and talk to Mr. Stink, and he seemed to be pleased to having a proper conversation for once. Well, because he's so smelly, no one wants to talk to him, do they? No. Poor Mr. Stink. He told Chloe, "Tell your mother how you feel. I'm sure she loves you and she would hate you to be unhappy. And try and find something fun you can do with your sister. And why not talk to your dad about how you feel?" Finally, Chloe told Mr. Stink how Mother had ripped her vampire story to shreds and she had to try very, very hard not to cry. "That's terrible, child," said Mr. Stink. "You must have been devastated." "I hate her," she said. "I hate my mother." "Oh, you shouldn't say that," said Mr. Stink. "But I do. You're very angry with her, of course you are. But she loves you, even if she finds it hard to tell you sometimes." "Maybe," Chloe shrugged, unconvinced. But having talked everything through, she felt calmer now. "Thank you so much for listening to me," she said. "I just hate to see a young girl like you looking sad," said Mr. Stink. "I may be old, but I can remember what it was like to be young. I just hope I helped a little." "You helped a lot," said Chloe. Mr. Stink smiled before letting the last sludge of his volcanic gloop slip down his throat. "Delicious. Now, we'd better leave some money for our beverages." He searched around in his pockets for some change. "Oh, bother. I can't read the board without my spectacles. I'll leave 6p. That should be enough, and a 2p tip. They will be pleased with that. They can treat themselves to one of those newfangled video cassettes. Right. I think you better be heading home now, young lady." The rain had stopped when they left the coffee shop. They sauntered down the road as cars hummed past. "Let's swap places," said Mr. Stink. "Why?" "Because a lady should always walk on the inside of a pavement and a gentleman should always walk on the outside." "Really?" said Chloe. "Why?" "Well," replied Mr. Stink, "the outside is more dangerous because that's where the cars are. But I believe it was originally because in the olden days people used to throw the contents of their chamber pots out of their windows and into the gutter. The person on the outside was more likely to get splattered." What's a chamber pot? Well, I don't wish to be crude, said Mr. Stink, but it's a portable toilet, like a little bowl with a handle, and you go to toilet in it, and then in the old days they used to throw it out the window. Ugh, that's gross, said Chloe. Did people do that when you were a boy? Mr. Stink chuckled. No, that was a little before my time, child, in the 16th century, in fact. Now, Miss Chloe, etiquette demands we swap places. His old-world gallantry was so charming it made Chloe smile, and they changed places. They strolled side by side, passing high street shop after high street shop, all trying to herald the approach of Christmas louder than the next. After a few moments, Chloe saw Rosamond walking towards them with a small flotilla of shopping bags. Can we cross the road, please, quickly? Whispered Chloe anxiously. Why, child? Whatever is the matter? It's that girl from school I just told you about, Rosamond. The one who stuck the sign on your back. Yes, that's her. You need to stand up to her, pronounced Mr. Stink. Let her be the one to cross the road. No, please don't say anything, pleaded Chloe. Who's this? Your new boyfriend? Laughed Rosamond. It wasn't a real laugh, like people do when they find something funny. She was being mean. That's a lovely sound. That's a lovely sound when people find something funny. This was a cruel laugh, an ugly sound. Chloe didn't say anything, she just looked down. My daddy just gave me £500 to buy myself whatever I wanted for Christmas, said Rosamond. I blew the lot at Topshop. Shame you're too fat to get into any of their clothes. Isn't she mean? Oh my goodness. Chloe merely sighed. She was used to being hounded by Rosamond. Why are you letting her talk to you like that? Said Mr. Stink. What's it to you, Grandad? Said Rosamond mockingly. Hanging around with smelly old tramps are you now, Chloe? You are tragic. How long did it take you to find that sign on your back then, hey? Ha! She didn't find it, said Mr. Stink slowly and deliberately. I did, and I didn't find it amusing. Didn't you? Said Rosamond. All the other girls found it really funny. Well then, they're as vile as you, said Mr. Stink. What? Said Rosamond. She wasn't used to being talked to like that. I said, then they're as vile as you, he repeated even louder this time. You are a nasty little bully. Chloe looked on anxiously. She hated confrontation. To make matters worse, Rosamond took a pace forward and stood eye to eye with Mr. Stink. Say that to my face, you old stinker. For a moment, Mr. Stink fell silent. Then he opened his mouth and let out the deepest, darkest, dirtiest burp. Burp! Right in her face. Rosamond's face turned green. It was as if a putrid tornado had engulfed her. It was the smell of coffee and sausages and rotten vegetables recovered from bins, all rolled into one. Rosamond turned and ran, hurtling down the high street in such a panic she dropped her Topshop bags on the way. That was so funny, laughed Chloe. I didn't mean to belch. It's most impolite. Oh, it was just that coffee repeating on me. Oh, dear me. Now, next time, I want you to stand up for yourself, Miss Chloe. A bully can only make you feel bad about yourself if you let them. Okay, I'll try. So, see you tomorrow? If you really want to, said Mr. Stink. I would love to, said Chloe. And I would love to too, he said, his eyes twinkling and twinkling as the last golden glow of sunlight splintered through the sky. At that moment, a 4x4 thundered past. Its giant tyres sloshed through a huge puddle by the bus stop, sending up a wave that soaked Mr. Stink from head to toe in dirty, dirty water. Water was dripping from his glasses. He gave Chloe a little bow, and that, he said, is why a gentleman always walks on the outside. Well, at least it wasn't a chamber pot, chuckled Chloe. Well, that was bad luck for Mr. Stink, but at least he was kind, wasn't he? He stood on the outside of the pavement. So I think that's something we should always remember. Girls and ladies stand on the inside, and men and boys always stand on the outside. That's a good lesson to learn, isn't it? I think so. So I wonder what's going to happen next. The next chapter is called Soap Dodgers. Chapter 6, Soap Dodgers. Now, we've heard that before from Chloe's mum. She calls them soap dodgers, doesn't she? So I wonder if Chloe's mum meets Mr. Stink. Maybe Chloe's mum finds out about Mr. Stink. Maybe it's not Chloe's mum that's going to be involved at all. We'll find out, won't we, next time? I'll see you then. Take care. Bye-bye.